going to help you steal Commander games straight out of the jaws of defeat with a very specific type of card.
I'm Mia, and I like going to get the mail.
I'm Beezy, and I really didn't think of a fact for this video. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. It's a website. Mia, tell about the website.
You can buy cards there. You can sell cards there. They give really good rates if you sell cards, and they have really good prices if you buy cards. All one package. Free shipping over $50. Treats their workers well. Treats us well. We love them. Go use the link in the description below. Tell them we sent you. Send some love to Card Kingdom.
Card Kingdom, 0% problematic. Also sponsored by the channel. This channel is sponsored by Dragon Shield. They got the best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
So head over with our discount code
Nerds.
at checkout. You actually save 5% of your real money tax dollars that you worked hard for that I don't like to give away personally, but you can save them by going to Dragon Shield and getting your sleeves there. Also, Moxfield's going to be here somewhere. You're not going to be able to guess where they are.
Because you're wrong.
At you from some surprise zone, and you're going to be wrong. But this video is a follow-up to our previous video where we talked a little bit about quadrant theory. I'm going to do a little recap on quadrant theory. We're going to get 4 little squares. We're going to analyze these cards in the developing stages of the game, the early turns, turn 1 to 5, parity after a board wipe resolves, or in a board stall, basically when all players have a similar amount of resources. When you're winning, where if the game continues as is, you'll win, and from a losing position, where if the game continues as is, you'll lose.
These are specific cards that help really well when you're losing, and sometimes they're really good in other parts of the game too. The first one we're going to cover is Farewell. It's a board wipe for 6 mana that can exile artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or graveyards, or all of the above, or any combination of those.
I thought this would be like the perfect starting example card, because we want to look at cards that are going to help us win the game when we are losing. Cards that'll bring us back so that we're now a player in the game instead of losing and being far behind. I think this is a perfect one because it sort of just resets the entire board. It's like the definitive board wipe for resetting everything. We want to plot this one?
I mean, I think board wipes are best when you are losing, but in the beginning of the game, turns 1 through 5, for instance, you're not going to be casting this. This is a 6 mana board wipe. It is hard to cast, and if you're developing, you don't want to wipe away all the progress you've already had. At parity, it is really good considering you can pick and choose the modes that suit you the best. For instance, if you have the best board, but someone's running away with artifact advantage, you can just wipe artifacts and then just have the creatures still available so you have a winning board state.
For the winning square, we have this as yellow, which is kind of in between the green and the red, the positive and the negative. When you top deck this, if you already have a dominating board state and you're looking to shut the door on the game and close things out as fast as possible, it will be good if you can swipe away all artifacts or swipe away all enchantments or exile their graveyards and just kind of put the last nail in the coffin. But it's not going to be good if you're just going to attack them and continue to gain advantage. It's not good on every board state when you're already winning. That's asking a bit much of our friend Farewell here.
It really is. And losing, it's absolutely amazing.
This is it.
At best case scenario, if everyone has better everything than you, you can just wipe the slate clean and just have everyone start at 0 everything.
Literally all this does not do, the only thing it does not do is like increase your life total. Everything else is now like completely leveled and even.
It also doesn't hurt Planeswalkers, so if you're going against a lot of Super Friends, watch out. But Planeswalkers aren't played that much in Commander compared to the other types, so I think this is a very good catch-all.
I think if your opponents have 6 Planeswalkers in play and you can't pressure any of them, you're in trouble for a different reason. But yeah, Farewell is just one of the quintessential come from behind, reset the game or reset the game slightly in your favor cards that I thought was the best to exemplify like the good when you're losing, stealing games out from under your opponents type cards. There's a plenty of different ones, and we're not going to just talk about board wipes, even though board wipes are one of the most common types of cards you'll see that we're plotting in this way, that it can help you recover from a losing position. The next one we're going to talk about is Druid of Purification. This is 4 mana, 2/3, ETB, starting with you. Each player destroys an artifact or enchantment that you don't control. So this can be up to a 4-for-1. What it really does is kind of say, hey, I'm going to blow your thing up. Now what do you want to do? Generally, I'm going to, if I'm that person, I go, well, I want to blow something up for free. And this tends to be a 3 or 4-for-1. This card is kind of cracked.
It has been so good every time I see it. In the developing phase, it's really good. It comes down for 4 mana, so it can come down really, really early. And if some person is just skyrocketing in the league with enchantments or artifacts, it's really easy to just knock them down a peg and say, okay, well, you're back to square one like the rest of us. I've seen people just out of value alone blow up a Soul Ring and then their Arcane Signet and then one other thing and just brought them back to like the 4 lands that we all started with.
This is how you kick people down when they do these fast mana, signet Signets, Ancient Tomb type starts where they ramp out artifacts and enchantments, you take your developing turns and you devote it to ruining everybody else's developing turns and wasting all their mana, and you've still got a creature in play, and it still serves your deck some purpose. So the developing stages, this card's actually amazing. At parity, when we all have a similar amount of resources, well, making you have less has got to be pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely been good there too. I think that in the end, Druid has been pretty good in most board states I've seen. You're not going to play on an empty board state, obviously, so you're only going to do it when you have at least a few targets, and people don't really team up to say, like, okay, well, I'll be nice and only pick one thing.
It's never practical.
Yeah, so everyone just likes value, especially if there's like a little bit of revenge per se. So if someone has like a Great Henge, a Smothering Titan, and a Soul Ring, someone will choose like the Great Henge, and the Great Henge person will go, well, you chose my thing, so I'm going to choose your thing, and it ends up being great just for the person who played it.
It happens all the time. We have it at yellow for parity because if the board is completely wiped, this isn't going to be very, very useful. But if we're stalled out, it's going to snipe some of the best things in play, stop people from running away with the game. And if we're maybe recovering from a regular board wipe, like a Day of Judgment, there's still going to be some artifacts and enchantments to snipe, so that's totally fair. When you're winning, it's fine. It's going to be yellow. It's definitely not negative for you. It's going to be a card you can cast. It's not even that expensive. You can help take out a few of the crucial pieces that might be slowing you down that you can help swing through. The only thing that might come up is if you are the complete arch enemy, you might destroy one thing, and your opponents might team up on you to say, I won't destroy anything else. In which case, you still have a 4-mana Reclamation Sage. This card is so good.
Yeah, I'm never mad at the 4-mana Rec Sage because that almost never happens. Even
Really
if you're
never,
arch
yeah.
enemy, I still think that people so rarely team up, all three of them, to go and pick only one thing. And when you're losing, this card absolutely shines. It's 4 mana, so it's very cheap and easy to just knock out 4 of the best things on the board. And as the person who is completely losing at that point, I feel like there usually is an archenemy or two, and so it's pretty easy to get everyone to destroy more than 3 things.
Yeah, if we can assume someone's going to be arch enemy at most points in the game, 75% of the time, that's not going to be you. So you can easily collude and talk with the other players and say, look, I can remove a few things, but I need some help. And they go, yeah, I'll destroy stuff for free. I'm just going to make that vote. And it totally helps catch you up from this position in a little bit of a different way than Farewell does, because it keeps the board intact. It just, instead of removing everything, it removes the most problematic stuff to bring you from here a little bit closer to here.
Next, we're going to go into a card that helps you in the life aspect. It's Benevolent Offering. You make 3 1/1s, an opponent makes 3 1/1s, and you gain 2 life for each creature you control. An opponent also does that. You're going to be making a few chump blockers if they have an overwhelming board presence, so you can soak up a little bit of that damage, so long as they don't have trample, and be able to gain a little bit of life too. And you're going to be pointing the life gain at someone who has little to no creatures. So maybe just someone else is losing too, so they gain 0 life, you gain 6 bare minimum, and you just get 3 1/1s. I think that's a pretty good rate for the 4 mana that this costs.
Yeah, we'll plot this card in a second, but it's interesting because you can be as selfish with this card or as, altruistic as you want. You can give out the life to the people who need it most and the tokens away and make some friends. Or you could just say, I don't screw you guys. I'm just taking my life and I'm taking my creatures, and you can have whatever you want the least. And so we're going to kind of almost factor that out because it doesn't even necessarily play a lot into how we craft this, but it's just another wrinkle to the card. Developing stages. This is surprisingly not uncastable. You could definitely just fire this off, put some tokens into play. In the first 5 turns, I could totally see it. It's not going to be broken. It's not going to gain you 100 life. But it is a play you can make, and a lot of the other cards on this list can't really say that, so we gave it yellow.
Yeah, it's 4 mana. It can come down really early. Parity, it's really nice considering that could be a really big chunk of life if you have a lot of creatures on board. And if it's after a board wipe, you could be the first one to have 3 creatures on board, which could snowball into advantage later.
Yeah, you just give them to the person who can use them the least, and then you take them and you go, great, I'm going to untap, I'm going to do something relevant with them, I'm going to pump them, I'm going to take the Monarchy, whatever. I'm going to protect a Planeswalker with them. There's a lot of options, whether you're building up from 0 resources or you've all got a bunch. When you got a bunch, this thing can gain you 100 life. Now, when you're winning the game, this can help you widen the gap a little bit. You can go full offense and make some chump blockers on defense. You don't really want to be giving away life or creatures, but that's when you turn on selfish mode and you give them to the people who you're not killing at the moment. But yeah, this is a little bit of a yellow when you're winning. It's not always the best card, but it is castable sometimes.
I like how you talk about selfish mode, like you're not always going to be casting it in selfish
That's my
mode.
personal.
It definitely is. I've only seen it cast altruistically once, and that was in like a King Kenrith group hug deck.
That wasn't me.
And that was not Beezy. Let me point that out real quick. But winning, it can really help you widen that gap, especially if you are like a token-based deck, because you can just gain, as Beezy said, like 100 life out of this. And the person gains 4. That's cool. That's nice.
100's a little bit of exaggeration, but seriously, you're gaining like 20 life with this card. It spots you 6. So it's not that unreasonable to think you have 7 other creatures in the middle of the game when you have a winning board state. I think that's pretty reasonable to gain 20 life off this card. That's a pretty huge gap. But the real thing that ties all these cards together is when you're losing. When you are losing, this gives you instant speed, 3 blockers, 6 life guaranteed. That can totally swing a combat in your favor. If you have some other creatures laying around that are not the best, you're up even further, and you can untap and easily get another turn or 2 just because you resolve this card.
It really helps in that, and just absorbing that damage later in the game. Even if they're just chumpers, I think that could, if people are swinging with giant pumped up tokens, or like with Moonshaker, for
dragons
instance,
or something.
Yeah, you could save yourself like 15, 20 life.
Yeah, 3/5/5 dragons. You think I have no blockers? All of a sudden I go up 10 life and I have 3 blockers. I take 0. I'm up 10 life, and now I have some life to play around with as I spend my mana to try to get out of this hole.
It's just really good value overall.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of value, what a perfect segue into this next one. It's Reach the Multiverse. 7 mana. Everybody mills 10. Then you steal the best thing that's dead from each person, and they come out onto your field. That's exactly what it says, by the way. Don't need to double check.
They're Phyrexians, too.
Yeah, and they're Phyrexians, which is the most relevant part. This is a 7 mana 4-for-1 that kind of gives you a little hint as to how good it's going to be, because you can see everybody's graveyard. So if you go, wow, that's a pretty good creature, I'd love to have it. It would help me stabilize. It would help me gain some life. It would help me destroy a creature that is an opponent's. You get to see all that, and you get 10 extra cards, a total of 40 extra cards to look at while resolving Breach.
I really love this. It's an NN favorite, as you guys may have heard. But in the developing stages, it's obviously not that good. It's 7 mana, so it's basically uncastable. In parity, though, it's absolutely amazing. You get the 4 best things on the field for 7 mana, which you can easily pick, and even if it's right after a farewell when the graveyard is gone or something, or someone gets bogged, you still get the 40 card look-see, at least, and you can still pick from there. So I think that's a really good advantage.
Seriously,
that's a lot of choice.
There's no point where, if everybody's even on resources, this will not just be a blowout. Everybody's got about the same. You're putting 4 amazing creatures or planeswalkers into play under your control. It's almost like when you cast this with parity, there is no longer parity, and you are now winning, which brings us to, if you cast this when you're winning, this will absolutely shut the door on the game. You're getting 4 more amazing things, push through damage, kill creatures, stop life totals from going up, just kind of dominates. When you're winning, you become dominating. When you're at parity, you become winning.
And when you're losing, it's an army in a can. You get the 4 best things out of anyone's graveyard. So if someone had a generous gift and killed the best thing on the board, and next turn when you play this, you just happen to get it back because it's already in the graveyard, that's amazing value. I think the worst I've ever seen this ever do is like 9 mana worth of creatures from the graveyard, and that's not good for this spell per se, but like that's still more value than you would actually get from the spell because of just mana cost alone.
Yeah, this is almost as good as Farewell is, but in reverse, because you're adding things to the board. So like when you're losing before Breach, you play Breach, and now you're at parity because you just put so much crap out that you've got to have something good. It's almost impossible not to just have some complete bangers on your side.
The next creature that we're going to talk about is absolutely brutal. It's Toxrill the Corrosive. It gives -1/-1 counters to all of your opponent's creatures for each end step that goes by, and so when they die, you get slugs, and you can pay mana and sack slugs to draw cards. It's a little bit of everything, and it's a beefy body, too. It's just really everything in one creature.
One-man wrecking crew. We're going to skip the developing stages. This card's bad in the developing stages. There's less creatures to actually take out, and it's really hard to cast because it's 7 mana. It's almost impossible. You can cheat it out, but that's really not enough of a percentage for us to even count that. But at parity in every other situation, this card, you can just play it. You can have no cards in your hand, rip this off the top, slam it down, and by itself, it will remove every other creature in a turn and a half, give you 13 1/1s, and let you cash them in for cards with mana. What doesn't this do? At parity, this is a disaster for your opponents. The longer this stays in play, the easier this game is going to be to win.
It's so nasty. I remember that in your Oscar deck, it used to be a thing, and then because of your old playgroup, you had to take it out because it was so devastating to the board.
Parity with Toxrill is not parity. You're dominating so quickly. When we have this at winning the game, it might look weird at yellow because, of course, I want to just remove more of my opponent's creatures. If this is in play and you are winning, of course, it's brutality is fantastic. The only thing we docked it for was it takes a little bit to get going. So if you're trying to draw very impactful spells to impact the board right away, this does not do that. You do have to at least wait till your end step and maybe an end step or two after that to get the full effect. So we gave it yellow, but I mean, clearly this is not the worst.
Toxrill isn't an overrun, but it sure can help just pave the way for hitting in damage. And when you're losing, it is the best. It gives you a body immediately. It'll just wipe the board of all the pesky creatures that your opponents have, especially if they're swinging in with like little tokens or something.
Forget
just clears the entire board for you. And it gives you a bunch of either chump blockers or card draw. And that's so good. That's just amazing.
If you're just struggling with attacking and blocking, just base, limited magic, as soon as you take out 1/1/1 from any other opponent's control,
Feels
you
good.
now have a 7/7 chunky blocker and a 1/1 to just throw under the bus for the next person. Then, when it's that person's end step, you just need one more creature to die, and you're going to start farming chump blockers to just stay alive. This card does everything. There's a reason it's a boogeyman, but I bet you've never seen it plotted on a quadrant before.
Absolutely not. But in the 99, it's really not as bad as if you slap in the command zone. So I'd highly recommend checking it out.
Yeah, the fun levels are higher in the 99. Command zone, this card is annoying. Time to switch gears a little bit and go to a instant. This is Prismari Command. It is a 3-mana instant. It gives you a lot of choices. You can draw 2, discard 2, make a treasure, deal 2 to a creature, or snipe an artifact. A lot of modes on this, and they're very useful at different points of the game, as it turns out, because this is one of the best quadrants we've ever seen. This is a developing masterpiece if you are struggling to hit land drops, if you are wanting to ramp a little bit to make your turn 5 special by making a treasure on turn 3. It does that. It digs you for answers. It snipes small utility creatures, and it snipes their signets and the mana rocks. What doesn't this card do in the developing stages? Every mode's relevant.
It really helps. And in parity, it's not too bad either. You can deal that damage around to smaller utility creatures like a Dothy, perhaps. That might be pretty nice. If you want to get rid of a pesky artifact, Soul Rings are still important in this parity stage. So
yeah, this won't break any board stalls in half, but it is just a nice 2-for-1. It can help dig you into a board wipe or something you're looking for. Same with winning. If you're already dumping on somebody and you're crushing them, this will help a little, but it will not move the needle from I'm winning to I'm destroying them. It's just like, oh, I'm winning, and now I'm winning by a little bit more, which we take. We take those.
And losing, it really depends on what you need, but I like the fact that it does a little bit of everything. So no matter what you need it for, 3 mana, it'll just help you move along your game plan.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to highlight with this card specifically is that when you're losing, a lot of what you need is just access to more cards. And this gives you to look at 2 more cards for 3 mana and can refund one of those mana if you want to make a treasure token with it. I just love the fact that it slices and dices. It has these removal options, but if you're desperate, you can dig for cards, and that's definitely one of the features I look for trying to dig myself out of the hole of me losing the game, is just give me more cards. I'll try to figure something out.
The multimodal spells are super nice. And if you want something else that's nice, you should come to our Whatnot stream on February 10th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you could be a winner. We're talking about losing a lot in this stream, but if you want to win free stuff, we're giving away pre-cons, collector boosters, and we're building a deck for you guys.
Yeah, let's plot this on the graph. Let's make a quadrant for Whatnot. When you're developing, when you're waking up in the morning and you need something to do, log on to Whatnot, check out some few box breaks. When you're at parity, when everybody has the same amount of resources, you pull out your phone, Whatnot, extra resource. When you're winning the game, when you're winning these giveaways, does anything feel any better? And when you're losing the giveaways, you get to support the other awesome people who are winning. You high-five each other. Wow, all green.
And if you want free cash on Whatnot, sign up using our link below, and you get $15 for free. That's amazing.
That's a 5th quadrant greened. Perfect. Thanks, Whatnot. We love you guys. We're going to go to our next card. This is a big, splashy boom card. That's what they call it. It's a Zuri's Predation. 5 green. For each creature your opponents control, you get a 4/4 Phyrexian Beast, and then each beast fights a different one of those creatures.
I have seen you win with this card off an empty board on your state and a bunch of just dirtly little tokens on everyone else's, and BZ suddenly has 16 4/4 beasts and no one has anything else, or maybe they have a 5/5 or a 1/6/6, and he goes, okay, so I'm winning now.
Yeah, we'll skip developing. Again, it's an 8 mana card. You don't even want to cast this. Even if you could cast this on turn 4, I don't even think it's that worth it most of the time. There might not be that many creatures in play. Skip that. It's bad. Parity. This is a one-sided board wipe-esque in green that when you're all even on boards, it takes out every one of their medium to small creatures, and then for every small creature, you just profit a 4/4. It just dominates. The only thing is, after a board wipe, if you are the first person to go, don't play this, because why would you play a board wipe after a board wipe?
Yeah, and winning, it's really, really good considering you're just getting rid of more blockers that the opponents can have and just putting more power on your side. I mean, who doesn't love that? That's just
It's a
killing
big swing, yeah.
That's killing your opponents faster. And losing, same deal. If everyone has a ton of utility creatures or small creatures that they're trying to overrun in the long run, you can remove all of those and then profit so many beasts from it for 8 mana. I mean, that's such a good rate. Plus, everything's like clear for you to just swing in the next turn.
Yeah, if you're worried about combats, you're worried about attacking and blocking, all you have to do, kind of like what Tox roll, is take out just a few utility creatures, 1/1s laying around. Then now you have a bunch of power and toughness to block the bigger things that don't die. And you'll lose a couple beasts in the process, but that's not a problem. I have cast this card so many times going, I'm screwed. I hope this does something for me. I cast it, I make 8 beasts that stay alive, and the rest, fight and kill everything else. And then I get to untap with my 8 beasts because my board wipe now demanded a board wipe and people didn't have it. And I go, I'll just kill people now. Like, this card is kind of unreal.
It's especially amazing if you have things like Concordant Crossroads, considering then, after that, you can just take out a player when they thought you were dead in the water because you have no board state.
Throw in, Garrick's Uprising, and now this is Decree of Pain in green. Super interesting card. When you are losing, nothing quite gets you out of that hole, and then also says Uno Reverse. Now I have all the threats, and you need to answer me. Quite like Azuri's Predation. Even Farewell, it resets back to 0 most of the time. This is, I'm going to reset the board to 100.
Farewell's equal, this is not.
This is not.
The next card is one that I really love. It's C Double. It's an instant that says you can either copy a spell or you can get a copy of the best thing on the battlefield, but if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, you can do both. And that's an amazing value for 4 mana.
Yeah, when we're developing, I think this card is weaker. It definitely is castable. So it's a card you could fire off if you need maybe you copy a Skyshroud Claim or you copy some kind of Solemn Simulacrum. You could. I think it's generally pretty bad in the early game. If you want to argue that it's a yellow, I wouldn't, fight you too much on that, but we just have it as red. We don't think it's that great. But parity is where this thing really shines. Taking the best thing in play and giving it to you. I mean, it's still going to be in play for them, but you now get an additional copy of the best thing in play. That's going to help swing the board in your favor. And this thing has the mode of, hey, if you've been playing this game for a while, if you have, or if somebody's going turbo mill, probably me, then you get to do an extra thing and copy another spell on the stack too.
There's so many nasty ETBs running around. For instance, what if you see an Atali across the board and you see them cast a Conjurer's Closet? What if you go, oh no, actually I'd like both of those things. That would be really cool.
Jeez. I mean, just that kind of value is a little...
Yeah, wait for your moment.
It's a bit much. Yeah, you do wait for your moment, but the fact that the floor of this is instant speed clone. Clones are very versatile. They are the best thing, the best creature in play at any given moment, no matter what. So if there's no creatures in play, you can still hold this up, and it'll still copy the next best spell from that board. So this really does it all. If there's a board wipe and we're back to 0, say, I'm going to copy the next thing someone tries to stabilize with. And if it's clogged to heck, you get a 2-for-1, and they're 2 of the best things going on.
I mean, this really shines in the later game, or mid to late at least, considering that you get the most value when an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. And if you're not playing against a graveyard deck, then it might be a little bit longer until you get that effect.
How about winning?
But when winning, it's not bad. I mean, you could get double of your best creature on the board, for instance. If you have the best creature, that's not a legendary, or you can just copy a spell. If someone tries to counter one of your things, you play C double and then just counter their counter spell.
Yeah,
it's not a bad rate.
I don't know why we have this as yellow. You know what? I'm going to change this one. Editor, change this one to green. This is how would copying the best creature in play not just destroy the opponents?
Yeah.
You're already winning, and now you have an additional thing that is the best. That feels like you're going to be winning a substantial amount more after that. But green for sure.
Yeah, what if I had a Crater Hoof and then I go, actually, I'll just copy my Crater Hoof.
Who was ever untapped with a Crater Hoof? When does that ever happen?
No, you play Crater Hoof and then you
needed a second one.
In response.
Did you need a second Crater Hoof?
It never hurts. If you're already winning in this scenario.
You have 12 mana. How about think of a more realistic situation and then apply this to that, and it'll be great. But when we're losing, that's what this video is all about. The best creature in play does not need to be ours. When we get the best creature in play, that's certainly going to help us not lose. What do you have to be losing to, right? Where, copying the best spell or copying the best creature doesn't bring you back at least a little bit. That's why clones are so good.
I think you'd be having to be worried about a combo or something, but I I think that in most metas where this is played, which are the combat metas, or like, I play this in a deck that focuses on milling people and drawing them a lot of cards. This has really shined there. It is something that it's not that hard to keep up the 4 mana, especially seeing those double blue pips up. People are worried, and it's really fun to make them sweat.
Yeah, so you might be wondering, if we're talking about escaping from the jaws of defeat, where these next types of cards have been. And they've been right here. We saved them a little bit. We wanted to get into this type. This is Darkness. Black for an instant. Prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn. This is an interesting take on, I'm going to prevent myself from losing. And we're going to compare this type of graph to the other quadrants. So Darkness, when you're developing, is a mulligan. You don't play it. You can't use it. You're not being attacked for anywhere close to enough that fogging would be worth it, right?
Yeah. Parity is the same way. People are going to either be in a board stall, so you're not going to have the chance to use it because it's not going to be big swings of damage, or there's going to be no creatures on the board anyways, so there's no use for this since there's no attacks.
Yeah, and you might say, but Mia, what if we're at parity and I'm being attacked for 30? Well, then you're not at parity because you're about to die, and I don't see a board state where you can be about to die and everybody has about the same amount of resources. I just don't think that really happens. When you're winning the game, why would you ever want to fog? Best case scenario, you could put in a giant attack, not kill everybody, then somehow be facing down a lethal attack and fog, but
then you're
is
not
that really a winning situation?
Yeah, like you're not winning at that point.
I'm not sure what I would call that.
Losing.
It's like throwing haymakers, but when you're losing, this is it. When you're being attacked for lethal, I can't imagine this being more cut and dry. It's amazing because now, not only are you not being attacked for lethal, you get to untap, do whatever you wanted to do, throw out some things, maybe you assemble a winning board state after, but this certainly is not a card you are happy to draw when you are already winning. But yeah, this is a card that people play a lot, and they go to it a lot because it has that effect on the game. It clinches victory from the jaws of defeat, but we plot it on this graph and we go, this really only has one very specific niche use, but some of these other cards can save us from defeat just as well or better, and they actually function at other points in the game.
I mean, it's the big gotcha moment, right? I mean, it's like deflecting palm. It's like, ooh, but if I prevent my lethal and I just point it at someone else, or I make them tap out and they don't have anything, it's going to feel so good. Or the one time you were able to do it, it felt really good. And we understand that, but also it's really nice to have other cards that function at multiple points in the game, and Darkness and other types of fogs are just not them.
Yeah, they're bench warmers, 85% of the time.
Filler.
We go to another card, but that is definitely a different card, but it has a similar graph. This is Heroic Intervention. 2 mana, give your stuff indestructible and hexproof until end of turn. So when you're developing, of course, you have no interest in this whatsoever because this card was never meant to be played in the developing stages.
In parity, it's not good either because it's not good in a board wipe, because if someone's wiping the board, then you guys aren't at parity. Obviously, someone's losing if they have to cast a board wipe against the rest of the board.
Yeah, this was kind of confusing. I had to walk through this because when you're in a clogged board state, this is generally not very useful. I don't think the situation is going to come up where someone throws a bunch of 6/6s and you block with a bunch of 6/6s and then you go, ha, combat trick. I win the combat. I don't think that happens very often, and that's not really why people play this. So, a clogged board, it's not really going to do anything. On an empty board, after a board wipe, it's not really going to do anything. And we had to talk about, well, what about when a board wipe's on the stack? Are we at parity? And we decided that we don't think that that's the case. I think that someone is breaking parity when the board wipe's on the stack, which is when you're going to cast this. And I think that would mean that you are then losing, which we will get to. But I don't think Heroic Intervention is a card that when you are at parity is very castable.
I don't think so either. On the stack, the person casting the board wipe is the one who is triggering these things, and so they are in the winning position, I'd say, because it's most favorable for them to wipe the board, which would make you guys not at parity. It would be in the losing position, so this is not good at parity.
Right. When you're winning the game, what are we supposed to do with this? This one, unlike Darkness, is actually even worse, because best case scenario, you fire off a board wipe, respond to it, make your stuff indestructible, and now you're winning even more. But then we're factoring in other cards, and they're kind of specific cards, and it has to be a board that destroys or deals damage. And so we just left it red as, generally, when you're winning the game and you're trying to close and you're trying to win the game faster, this is a complete brick off the top.
Yeah. But losing,
here we go.
Yeah, if you're walking into a board wipe and that is going to hurt you big time, this is going to be great. If you have one piece of your board that you can't have touched and someone tries to target it, you can give it hexproof, and that feels real good for 2 mana, but it's only good in that losing state, I think.
Maybe we could you could argue that in parity, if someone tries to destroy one of your things, you could respond and give that thing to continue parity. That, if you really want to fight us on that one,
maybe
we can give you orange. We won't give you yellow for parity, but we can give you orange. But yeah, that with losing, this is what everybody thinks of. They think of the big moment where there's this huge board wipe and they go, ha, not for me. And then from that point, you're probably going to win the game. So huge swing if you can resolve this. Probably an even bigger swing than darkness sometimes.
Yeah, people love to get swept up in the gotcha cards. I mean, we've all been there, right? So it's just really you've got to keep it in mind about whether that card is good at any point in the game or just in those gotcha moments. But something that's really good in every point of the game is Moxfield.com,
Gotcha.
the best place online to build a deck. It's really great because I use it when I'm tutoring because it lets me see everything I need in my deck very easily, and it just lets me look at them in like a very concise visual grid.
Yeah, you were sucked up in the jaws of this video, and we got you with a Moxfield ad. Moxfield's great. We love them. We don't do ads for Moxfield because we want to bamboozle you. That's just a side effect of us talking about the greatest website that's ever existed.
We really love building decks on Moxfield, and we have an account there. So if you want to see any of our decks, like the cards that we talked about and where we put them, go follow us. Go check out our decks.
We are going to talk about a card that's very similar to Heroic Intervention, and we're going to plot it on a graph. This is Grand Crescendo. X, white, make X 1/1s, then your creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. So this is like kind of that same thing. At baseline, you can pay white to make your stuff indestructible. Generally, we're going to be surviving board wipes with that stuff, but there's a little bit of a wrinkle in that we could make some tokens depending on how much mana we have. So we're developing, despite the fact that you can make 2 or 3 tokens on turns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I want to give this a red. I don't think people are trying to cast this. You might even be losing percentage points by giving up having this in your hand, casting it so early.
At parity, it's really, really good, though, considering that you get X bodies on the field, and you just have that many more attackers or blockers against everyone else, whether they have nothing on the field and you're the first one to set up, or they have the same amount of creatures as you and you have a lot more damage to chip in.
Mainly, we're going to go over the differences between this and Heroic Intervention, since they have the same baseline of, I guess my creatures survive combat, but this adds to the board based on how much mana you have. If you have mana production going on, you can take a parity board state of complete and utter stall to throw out a bunch of tokens. If you untap and you do the thing that token decks do and pump them and get things going in some way, that's how you break through a board wipe. Funnily enough, this also works pretty decently after a board wipe because you can pass the turn after you draw it or after you have it. You untap, pass with 8 mana. Then, right before your turn, you fire it off, you make 6 dudes. Heroic Intervention's not even close to doing that. I mean, it's not a super likely thing that you're going to have this on an empty board, but you might draw it, and this is useful.
I really like the fact that these are multimodal. It's kind of like Tyvar Stan, where you can do it for X equals 0, so you do get the effects of like the hexproof and stuff if you don't want the pump, but it's just like really good if you want that baseline too. At winning, it's really amazing considering you're just making a bunch of guys on the field.
Forget the indestructible, that's a bonus.
It's just an amazing bonus if you're swinging in for a ton of combat damage. And losing, well, you're making people to block or to attack, depending on what you need, and it becomes indestructible for that turn, so it just can't be destroyed by any of the destroy board wipes or anything like that.
Right, so they fire off a board wipe that would put you in a losing position, and you go, no, I will just completely ignore that. And I have 5 more dudes. Any of my ETBs or value stuff triggers, that's good to have, and good luck beating that. I'm now in a firm winning position.
I really like Grand Crescendo. I should play it a lot more.
I mean, comparing the graphs to Heroic Intervention makes me want to just, if I had Heroic Intervention in any decks, make the switcheroo, but I want to start playing Grand Crescendo more.
I only have Heroic Intervention in Savala mono green anyways, so unfortunately you can't make that switch.
This is true.
One of the big boys that we're going to talk about is Kakusho, the Evening Star. He's a 5/5 that flies, and when he dies, each opponent loses 5, and you gain all that life back. So we want to represent something in the air where it's like a really good blocker, but it's one of those, ooh, well, if you attack me, I'll just gain 15 life immediately. And if you have any reanimation stuff, it can also be recurred.
Right. Kakusho, not a card you're going to play in the early game, just because you probably won't have the mana. At parity, it sort of sits in play, and it's a little bit of representation of like, hey, if this dies, if you attack me with too many things, you're going to lose a chunk of life, and I might be able to use that life swing to my advantage to change things up. Although sometimes it will just kind of sit there.
Yeah, it's never the worst first thing to put on the board after a board wipe either, though.
That's fine, honestly. I mean, even if a board wipe hits, you're pretty okay with that, but that's more of the losing situation that we'll get to. When you're winning, if you can sacrifice it, which is an if, it's not the biggest if, but it is an if, this thing will just, it's a burn spell. It's a lava axe to everyone's face. Make it so you can't be attacked as well. And if you can't, it's really just a flyer. But even then, sometimes that does help close the door. So it's got a yellow.
Yeah, 5 damage in the air is substantial in the late game when everyone's run around at like 20 or less.
If you give it haste or something, you got a stew brewing.
You can make it work. And losing is where it really shines, considering it's a blocker that's pretty beefy, so people are less likely to swing at you. And if they have really chunky creatures, you can go, okay, well, if you swing at me, I mean, everyone's going to take damage, and I'm going to be at maybe the most life at that point. So why would you ever do that?
Treating it kind of like a benevolent offering, but it's more on board, but it's also probably more life. I mean, we're talking about a 4-player game, but if you're in a 5-player game, just know that this card does scale up even more. Yeah, it just says, like, I have a chunky blocker in the air. I can chump block your biggest thing, maybe sacrifice it before damage or something, and I will go up a lot of life. I think I can definitely deter things, and it will just, in general, keep you alive for at least another turn. So we had to give it bonus points for losing, especially when it gets swept up in a board wipe and you're just feeling great. You're like, thanks for the life boost. You guys are all a quarter dead, and I get to maybe overextend a little, or like extend a little bit further, not being have to worry about my life total.
I feel like I used to see a Kakusho a lot more, and I haven't seen him much lately. I really would like to see him more.
I'd like to see some more Kakushos, and you might want to see more Quadrant Theory. We've got another Quadrant Theory video that we liked a lot. It's cards that are only good when you're... I won't finish the sentence, so you have to watch the video now.